Hey, good afternoon, folks. If I can just interrupt for a brief minute. I'm Kevin Krause. I'm the next. Fan Club. Thank you, guys. I'm scheduled to start at 3:15, so that's why I'm just hanging out. I don't want to start early until people migrate in. But y'all are kind enough to be here despite the weather, so I thought if you got any questions up front, you haven't even heard me talk yet, but you may have some questions if you heard yesterday's or if you've heard me in the past here. Questions about microbiology in regard to soil and that sort of thing. Yeah, please. That's okay. Yeah, so anybody's got a question, want to raise their hand? We could make use of a little time up front. Yes, sir.
We spoke this morning
Yes, sir, we did.
about straw bale garden.
Yep, straw bale garden.
My question,
Yep.
will you get the same nutrients out of the vegetables like you do in that? Straw bale or
Great question. This fine gentleman asked if you use straw bale gardening. Has anyone heard of that? Okay. He's asking if you'll get the same nutrients for your produce. Is that fair? Okay. The possibility is certainly there. We did straw bale gardening once. I had to confess to him, that's the only time we ever did it. It just sucked too much water. The water went right through it. For us, that was our experience with it. So we didn't do it again. But conceptually, what you're looking at is, do the microbes have enough raw materials to harvest all the minerals they need to feed whatever you're planting will need and desire? You know, if you think back to yesterday a little bit, we talked about trying to simplify this. We got the 90 minerals on the periodic table. Theoretically, that's what your carrot's looking for. Some helping of all 90 of those minerals. Is it feasible to get all those to exist in a simple bale of hay that we got from somebody's pasture? Probably only if we properly amend that hole, and that's what you do as part of straw bale gardening. You put compost in. If you could get a full spectrum mineral, you know, C90, Redmond salt, something like that, it's not the only thing. And I hope, if I didn't make this clear yesterday, there's a whole lot of ways to skin a cat. So please don't think that what I just said is the only way to write it down in steps 1, 2, 3. You guys will think of better things than I ever have, probably. But if you can just think through it in that manner, that little hole, have I put enough raw resources in there that would theoretically have all the mineral content those microbes might need to feed that carrot? Then I would say flat out yes to your answer, or to your question. Yes, ma'am.
Pardon me, sir. If you have an issue where you're getting all of the cementation issue in a sandy soil like acts impacted, what would you do to make that soil more hospitable for microbes?
I missed the first part. You talked about what kind of soil? Sandy soil?
Well, it's somewhat a sandy soil, but acts compacted like a cemented.
A compacted soil. Yeah.
How would you open that up for better microbes?
Well, this is one thing we did talk about some possibilities yesterday.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's a great question. Compacted, well, when we get to talking about microbes again today, we'll make it clear that the microbes need air, water, food, and comfort. Air, those 4 things. The same thing you and I need. Air, water, food, and comfort. So if you've got heavily compacted soil, that does not facilitate airflow or water flow. You get that. That's your question. So how could I help that? Well, what's in your toolkit and what's your scale of effort? You could probably go over to the fella, I didn't get a chance to talk to him this year, but there's a guy here every year who sells broadforks. On a simple scale. You can take that out, open the ground up with it, and you're enabling an airflow and a water flow into that specific location where you're working. Yeah. Sealed right back up? Yeah. Well, I would submit that is probably indicative of a calcium deficiency when that happens, and it's actually an electromagnetic thing in the soil. Calcium to magnesium, so if we had a month to talk about all this, we could talk about the physics part, the biological part, the chemical part. So very briefly on the physics part, we're all aware of the atoms that are out there, the calcium, the magnesium, at least, we're sort of aware of them. We've never seen them. They're too small to look at the atomic level. But the way we think those charges work, it's important to have calcium to magnesium ratios in your soil about a 5-to-1 or better, per Dr. Kerry Ream's research in the 1950s. And that was using a soil test known as a Lamont soil test or a Morgan soil test, because it makes my head spin when somebody says, what should I do for a soil test? Well, there's probably, I don't know how many, tens if not hundreds of different soil tests that all claim to be the best. The best summation of that I've heard with recently was a very smart guy said, all soil tests are wrong, some of them are useful. That to me was kind of a cool way to sum it up. It's a matter of understanding what the intent of the test was, really understanding what the numbers meant, making sense of them as it applies to you. But what I'm trying to just quickly answer is that Lamont Morgan is what Dr. Kerry Reams based his approach on. And when you look up Dr. Kerry Reams, highbricksgardens.com may go into some of this. He had sort of a perfect formula for the right soils on how much calcium, how much magnesium, how much whatever. Calcium to magnesium ratio is the critical one for compaction, airflow, water infiltration. 5-to-1 would be a kind of a minimum threshold to reach. Yeah. And my friends are probably packing up, but I talked about this yesterday. There was a booth here called Calisol. If you talk to Stan eats and breathes this concept. That's why he invented his product, was to give you a resource to put a calcium fix, if you will, into a situation like that. Great question. Any others, y'all? Yes, please, sir.
So we're going to do a new piece of property.
Okay.
Planting a new spot for a garden.
Yeah.
You start with a soil test. You get your results. Would you top till and no till to correct the soil, or would you till to break up that and then move from there?
Well, if it were me, again, don't say this is the only way to do it. And then this is what we did. We didn't test the soil. If you're talking the mineral soil test, we did not. We chose to, as the previous educator, great job, build raised beds on. And then you own what's in the raised bed. You don't have to worry about what's beneath it. And so, a lot of variables in this, your personal preferences. How quickly do you want carrots? Do you want to wait until you've amended that soil properly to get carrots? Or you just want to put in some raised beds so you can get, lettuce for your salad quicker? And that's where I guess I would suggest, not knowing your entire, situation or goals or anything, but if you start just building that soil up in a raised bed, you own what's in it. You can start from scratch. You're not fighting. If you know the history of the ground, was it sprayed with chemicals? Don't know. My thought would be just assume that it probably has. But what was it used for? The pasture or row crops or?
It's like small livestock farm.
Small livestock farm.
Yeah,
Okay.
like more barn farm.
Okay, that's what it was?
Yes.
Okay. So they probably did not do anything too bad to it, but they probably, if they used dewormers in their animals, that residue could be there. They may have been, particular about what they call weeds and may have sprayed it with products. So some of that's in there. So that's why, again, I think a raised bed's a great place to start.
Thank you.
Now, when you get the raised bed started, and then if you want to go from there, sure, I would look at lasagna gardening. This is my 4th year here presenting, and I'll open in just a second and tell you more about it. If you go to our website, my last year's 2 presentations are available on YouTube now. I don't have a YouTube channel, but if you can just Google search Kevin Krause Living Soil, and those presentations will pop up. Because last year I actually talked through a scenario of building a lasagna raised bed in the middle of a pasture. As best we could, in 10 minutes or so. It'll give you the idea how to do something like that. So I would maybe start there, because it takes time for this stuff to happen. So if you want to get some raised beds going simultaneously while you're trying to develop a great place for the rest of it, And I would also advise, if you're going to pick a spot like that, or if you're going to build a garden like that, think of it with a permaculture mindset. Permaculture mindset has you think about, where do I visit most frequently every day? My house, probably, because that's where I live. Now, when I leave my house, how far do I want to walk to the garden? Because that's a place I'm probably going to be every day. So I don't want the garden on the other end of the property, too far away. So if you had to consider that, I mean, common sense things that aren't common sense when you're in the middle of this, and just forget about it. But try and locate a garden, close to the front door, so it's quick and easy, so that you don't spend 2 years amending an area and say, darn, that's too far from the house. I got to start over. Another quick thing on the garden, we put an orchard fence around it to keep the deer out and all that. Think that through before you do that. It's a real pain to weed whack around it. We still have it, it works great, but when it comes time to weed whack, it's kind of hard on my back. So think of ways like that. Maybe, depending upon your situation, if you got a guard dog out there, Great Pyrenees, the deer aren't going to be there, so that's not an issue. Or you might be better off just putting 3 strands of electric fence around it. But then you have rabbit problems. Well, whatever. Those are just kind of things to think through. A lot of ways to skin the cat. Any others, guys? Yes, ma'am. Korean natural farming, I have loved. I tell people, and I'll briefly introduce the background I've had and the mentors and teachers I've had. Dollar for dollar, if you're going to spend some money on a class, I personally found Korean natural farming to be the best. Value for the money, if you will. So I believe strongly in it. Korean natural farming originates from about 2,000 years of peasant farming in Korea and Japan. So if you look at that open-mindedly, it's obvious those guys learned a lot. They may not have had spectrum analyzers and microscopes and X-ray machines, but they learned how to make plants grow very, very healthy. And a guy by the name of, we call him Master Cho. He passed away in 2025, but he codified Korean natural farming. He was trying to promote it so that he could short-circuit Monsanto's arrival to South Korea to help all of those farmers do things our way. So that's kind of the very short story on how it originated. A guy by the name of Chris Trump, a Hawaiian native, met Master Cho, and at the time, Chris had the largest family-owned macadamia nut farm, I think, in the world. It turned out, though, they were having hard times because they were using industrial processes and the trees started getting diseased. And they were looking for alternatives. So Chris learned about Master Cho. I think he went to Korea, actually, spent time with him and learned the Korean natural farming arts. Brought it back to Hawaii and applied it to his macadamia nuts. Didn't have any expectation of work. He just said, okay, well, I'm going to take these 10 trees and put the stuff on it. Then they got a drought shortly thereafter. The trees that he had treated handled well. So it was an eye-opening experience for him of, wow, there's something to this. So he's become a real passionate guy trying to spread Korean natural farming. He's the guy that was my teacher. And he put on a class here in Franklin, Tennessee, maybe 3-4 years ago now. But he has a website that you can do that. I think they're online. And he's also got a lot of YouTube. So take a look at those before you sign up for anything. But just do a Google search on Korean natural farming, Chris Trump. Now, I'll also quickly mention, you may hear the term Jadam. Master Cho's son, I forget his name, but he wrote a book called Jadam. And his goal was to simplify Korean natural farming to make it more doable for the average farmer. Their belief system is farmers should not have to buy any inputs from off the farm. That's what kills our farmers, right? And have to spend all the money on all the outside inputs. These guys are big believers, don't spend any money off the farm. But the average size of the farm is like 1 acre, too. I mean, intensively managed, so it's smaller. But that's what goes into the system, is how to make all your own stuff. So as an example, We're going to talk about composting quite a bit. I'll show you just a little about Korean natural farming. But we compost in the United States in a way that I'll show you. Korean natural farming has a version of composting. When I get their compost, I will make a liquid product out of that. It's sort of like compost tea. It's comparable, if you will, but it's got different life forms in it, which is cool. But in addition to simple compost tea and compost, you also get taught how to make a calcium solution, which is a tremendous foliar spray. How might I do that? Well, what if I had chickens and eggshells? I have my omelets every morning. I save the eggshells. It's actually helpful to put those, to heat treat them. Put them in a cast iron skillet, heat treat them, so the little membranes get burned off and they become brittle. Take that and put it in vinegar for about a day. Or, I'm sorry, 7 days. So that's the kind of thing you would do. You'd learn to take some eggshells or maybe some oyster shells. You probably have oyster shells at home if you have laying hens. Take some of those oyster shells, put a ratio of vinegar with it, let it just sit there, and now you've got a solution of calcium. And now you dilute that into water, and you can, well, there's more things that go in this. Korean natural farming is a lot like cooking in some ways, because I have my calcium liquid, but oh, by the way, I'm going to make a tincture, essentially, with vodka, ginger, angelica, and arrowroot, I think, those 3 roots. So I make something called OHN. The calcium stuff is called WCA, so there's a lot of acronyms in it. And then when I make a concoction to spray on my tomatoes, I'll put a little WCA with some OHN, with some apple cider vinegar. The last ingredient in this case I would use is fermented plant juice. And it's a great resource you probably don't think of if you've got weeds that thrive in your pasture, things that you would call weeds. If my cattle eat it, it's not a weed. So that's my definition of a weed. If my cattle eat it, it's not a weed. I don't care what it is. It's a spore. It's a medicinal spore, probably, that they would love to eat. But if we agreed on something, let's say a pokeweed was growing here, big old tall pokeweed, and Daryl could have probably told us a million ways to use it, but commonly we'd say that's a pokeweed. But in Korean natural farming, I chop up that pokeweed and I mix it 50-50 with brown sugar and essentially ferment it in a glass jar or a crock for 7 days. Strain off the liquid, now I have fermented plant juice. What have I done? I've gotten microbes involved to digest that pokeweed, to harvest mineral content from that pokeweed, and to put it in liquid form. So when I create this ultimate spray to go on my garden, it's got fermented pokeweed, calcium product in it from my chicken shells. It's got apple cider vinegar and the tincture with all the roots. So that becomes my spray. And you mix these things at like a 1,000 to 1 ratio. So when I mix up a half a gallon of spray, I'm putting a little half a teaspoon in here. So if I go to the trouble of making this and I got a quart jug, half a teaspoon, whatever, every other week, that lasts a long time. So you can make a real nice inventory of some neat sprays. So Jadam is a simplified version. Chris Trump's opinion is Jadam is not as good a quality in terms of biology. It's quicker, but Korean natural farming gives you better biology. However, Jadam brings some actual homemade organic pesticides if you truly need to use them. There's a product that I'll make out of sulfur. I haven't used it a lot, but it was just kind of cool to make it. I made my own surfactant out of canola oil, and then some sulfur. I forget what all went into it. Some lye, and sulfur. Anyway, it was kind of cool to make it. But you're creating a much more friendly to you homemade pesticide if you really need to use that. Well, the recipes come from a Korean natural farming class. But if you start to investigate it on YouTube, you'll see something like, if you do Chris Trump WCAP, hopefully that'll help you start to understand what the heck that means. You're looking for a Chris Trump video where he's making WCAP. All this stuff is kind of acronyms. The biological equivalent is called IMO, indigenous microorganisms. So I just love it. When I want indigenous microorganisms on my own farm, I take a box that I put holes in, I put al dente rice in it, I go out in the woods and I look for a fungal outcropping, a place that I know is thriving with life. I set that box on it. I'm oversimplifying, there's more to it, but I set the box on it. That's food for the microbes. So they move in and colonize that rice. About a week later, I come back, I bring that rice in, I mix it with brown sugar, which sucks the moisture out, and basically puts them into a dormant state. And then I can put them on my shelf next to my yeast, and they sit there. Just like you would, you're getting ready to bake a pizza, you pull the yeast out of the cupboard. I'm getting ready to work in the garden, I pull my IMO off the shelf. So it's dormant microbes, ready to come back to life. How do I get them to come back to life? I add air, water, food, and comfort. The same with your yeast. How do you get them to come back to life? You mix them with sugar, flour, water, and you put them in a warm place and they take off. Same thing with this IMO that I put on the shelf. Yeah, so that was a great question. Did I give you more than you ever wanted to hear about pre-natural farming? Or did I even answer your question?
Well, I can read about it for a while.
Yeah.
Finding good resources.
Yeah,
Unpack all that and then
yeah, yep.
It's amazing, but like where's that? You're this here and you're this here and you're this here and you're all this.
Oh, it just seems too complicated, perhaps? Okay. Don't let that scare you because I don't make it complicated at all. I do what I can when I can. Now, my tomatoes may suffer for that, but you're human and you only do what you can do. Now, what I would start with, we'll talk about it today, obviously, but when I'm creating a soil, I want life in it. So I'll reach for my compost. I may reach for some IMO4. I'll put these things in. So that's kind of my foundation. I'm not worried about doing that multiple times. I just do that maybe once. And then what I start to do with pre-natural farming is I'll monitor my plants, just like you will. So indicators in your plants, you're probably smarter at this than I am, but you're going to look for yellowing of the leaves, diseases, insects. Those are indicators that you have a problem. That's when I try to reach for pre-natural farming, or preferably before that. The way pre-natural farming is really designed, if you're on top of your game, is the plant goes through a life cycle. You already read that? You know that? Well, I guess I'll tell everybody else. The plant goes through a life cycle, just like us humans do. You're an infant. You go through, childhood and puberty, et cetera, et cetera. The plant's needs change along the route. So by the time, the plant starts out, it might need a good bit of nitrogen to grow foliarly. So you reach for your nitrogen spray, and that's what you put on that week. By the time it gets ready to reproduce, like a pregnant anything, it has different demands. So you might need the calcium spray or the calcium potassium or calcium phosphorus spray. So that's when you pull it out and use it. So what I have found, frankly, is this year I'm really trying to use it more. I'll spray once a week. And I haven't found that too taxing. I haven't looked at any book schedule or anything. I just mix up what sort of matches the life cycle of that plant, where it's at in its life cycle, and I'll just go out and spray that on. I've got a little hand sprayer that I use. I mix up a half a gallon of it, put a half a gallon of rainwater in there, put whatever my spray for the week is, and I just go out and spray the garden. And it's not perfect because, my lettuce is farther along than my tomatoes than whatever, but I just spray everything gets the same thing. And I have found that to be pretty good. This year, we probably have one of our better gardens ever so far, just doing that kind of weekly spray with you're adding nutrition and you're also adding biology every time you do that. You probably could. The safest thing to use once a week, probably indefinitely, would be what's called the maintenance solution, the SES, which is just fermented plant juice, OHN, and apple cider vinegar. Those three ingredients. Where you might run into problems is using too much calcium or too much phosphorus or whatever, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. Spray the plant, give it a week and see if it looked better or worse or not. That's kind of the gauge. If you want to get scientific, you can get your Brix meter out. I don't know if you were here yesterday when we talked about that, but a Brix meter or refractometer is a neat portable scientific tool, if you will, to assess the health of your plant. So you can go out and take a leaf off of that plant. You can squish that leaf, sometimes easier said than done, I use these sap extractors for tough leaves. But I'll ball up a bunch of leaves in there and squish it, get some sap to come out on my refractometer, and then I'll just look up at the sun and see. The higher the number, the better. Dr. Tom Dykstra, I highly, highly recommend his work. Dr. Tom Dykstra is down in Florida. He's an entomologist. He's been doing this for decades.
Wonderful book.
Wonderful book, too?
Wonderful book.
Okay. Awesome.
It explains so a lot.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great to hear. He's got some videos out there that I encourage you to look at. He has, in his decades of experience now, he categorizes insects. Aphids are at the bottom. Chewers, such as grasshoppers, are at the top. He has found this to be the case for decades without fail. If he tests the Brix reading of the plant, puts it on his chart, and I don't have to memorize, but let's say a Brix between 0 and 6, aphids will love that plant. If the Brix is between 7 and 10, whatever the next critter in this category will love that plant. We get from Brix to 14 and above, roughly, no insects will eat your plant. No diseases will touch that plant. And hopefully you would start to think about, the same thing for us humans probably, right? Our cattle, our hogs, our chickens, we're all kind of wired that same exact way. Get your equivalent Brix reading up high enough, pretty much immune to disease, and that's what he's found in the plants. So he's doing that stuff all over. So fascinating stuff. And Carter, did you say there was a specific book that he said?
Yes.
And what is that book?
It's the soil. I'll think of it.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, guys, I'm sorry. I'm finally looking at my watch. It's time to get started. So let me do that. Okay. Can everybody see the slides okay here? Okay. I'm going to assume most of you were here yesterday. We're going to talk about microbes today. You didn't have to be here yesterday. This is standalone. I want to start by telling you this is my 4th year here at the festival. This presentation is different than any of the others. So this is not a direct repeat of last year. If you find this topic interesting, I encourage you to go out to our website, libertytracefarm.com. My wife and I have been researching this stuff for at least 17 years. And we've read more books, podcasts, all kinds of stuff that we can even remember. We've tried to pick what we felt was the best, and it's out there on our books and resources tab. So if you're getting started and want to, what do I read first? Well, we tried to help you in that. So take a look at the books and resources tab. My presentations from the last 2 years are on YouTube. You can do a Google search, Kevin Krause, Living Soil. Or you can go to our website, and under my Living Soil tab, I have links to those presentations from last year. The slides that I'm showing you today are already posted on our website, as are slides from the last 2 years. I want you to have a working reference that's there. My goal is to help you help yourselves. Ultimately, that's what I want to do. So that stuff's out there. Let's see. Let's move on here. Okay, my objectives today. I want to just give you a brief background. If this is the first time you're hearing from me, you'll know why I sound crazy, maybe. The importance of microbes in the soil. We're going to cover that again briefly. And then I want to show you how to raise your own microbes at home. I would argue they are your flat out most important livestock you could ever raise. And you can't even see them. So it's kind of interesting. So the journey for my wife and I started, well, I'm an Iowa farm kid, so I guess I kind of have it in my blood. My wife hails from Oklahoma. I went to the Air Force Academy years ago and then did a military career for about 26 years. Never thought I'd farm again. But in 2008, my wife and I went to see this movie. It was eye-opening for us if you have not seen it yet. 2008 it came out. They make the point in there that our food has changed immensely in the past 50 years. Growing up in Iowa, I saw it, but as a kid I didn't comprehend what was going on. But seeing this movie helped me fill in some of the pieces that I didn't understand. That ignited a passion in my wife and I to explore what we understood to be true at the time. So we reached out for sources to try and figure out what truth was. That journey continues every day. But we started with nutrition. So these are a few of the books we started to read to learn about how does nutrition affect human health. Oh, by the way, our conclusion is you are what you eat. cut right to the chase. Then we started to figure out how can we raise our own food so it's worth eating. So we wanted to look at alternatives for that. Alternatives that did not involve Monsanto. And anyway, I'm gonna probably throw them out there under the bus a lot, but any big ag company, I don't need their help. Thank you, if I can do it my own. So we started a small farm in Hampshire, Tennessee in 2015. We modeled it after Joel Salatin's. So we've been raising grass-fed beef, pork, chicken, turkey, ducks, honeybees, etc. for going on 11 years now, selling direct to the public and eating well ourselves. My wife and I have divided and conquered a little bit. She became a health and nutrition coach. This is my wife, Nikki, right over here. I've kind of got fixated on where does nutrient density come from? How can I look my customers at the farmer's market in the eye and say, yes, my eggs are nutrient dense, if I don't even know where nutrient density comes from? I really can't. So I was blessed to run into some mentors and trainers along the way. Dr. Elaine Ingham is an internationally recognized expert on soil microbes and what they do. She's been at this for decades, flat out, period, well known. She started a school called the Soil Food Web School. I became one of her students several years ago, took her basic program, and then I decided to become one of her advanced people, if you will. So I took her consultant training program and lab technician program. So I'm capable of being a soil lab and whatever, not trying to impress you, but that's just part of the background. During the course, she teaches me about the microbiome, what they are, what they do, what their contribution is, how to raise them, how to grow them, how to use a microscope to inspect them, if you will, and then how to convert dirt into soil. They're not the same thing. Then came the Korean natural farming, which we already discussed a good bit. Korean natural farming to me was phenomenal because without a microscope, those peasant farmers concluded that the number one ingredient to nutrient density is biology. Same thing Elaine contributed. So when I start to hear the same thing from multiple messengers around the world, I start to give it credibility, without a doubt. Then I went into permaculture design, took Jeff Lawton's program, highly recommend this. In fact, you guys were asking great questions up front. This is where I would submit, before you put your garden in, take a look at some permaculture stuff. This is all about smartly designing your homestead, your farm, your property to match the terrain. I mean, today, we may not have thought rain would run right through here, but now we know. So maybe this is not the best place to put a garden. So that's kind of what this involves, observing where things happen on your farm. Where's the best place to put a pond? Hey, maybe it's right here. There's already 3 inches of water. Those are the kind of things that you smartly think through before you just go out there and start, shoveling. And before you plant a tree, you might want to think about it permaculturally. And here's a couple great books to get you started in that. The one on the left is a basic introduction. The one on the right, phenomenal. Mark Shepard. He's been doing this for decades. He's got a business where he'll consult and help people do this, but he's out there in video form and book form. Now, I talked a little about this yesterday, but have you all heard the term follow the science? I've become kind of cynical about that. Because as I've researched all this stuff, I've come to conclude science has misled us more often than not. And here's an example I will throw out at you. Dr. Louis Pasteur in the middle gave us the germ theory in the 1860s or 70s. Not saying he was all wrong by any means, but he wasn't the only story in town. The fella to his right, Antoine Béchamp, looked at it a little differently. But who did we give all the credit to? Who did we jump on board with? Louis Pasteur. Because it matches our human mindset of declaring war on things, doesn't it? Declare war on germs. We can blame germs for every little illness we have, and all we got to do is kill them. Reach for Lysol, and we'll kill 99.9% of those germs. Because in our ignorance, and it's still pretty common today, we didn't understand they have benefits. So, you ever had moldy bread? That's just a picture of moldy bread, just to kind of paint the picture. I don't like mold on my bread, but if you stop and think about it, God, Mother Nature put them here to do what? Recycle that bread. It's converting that bread into nutrition for the next crop of wheat, if you will, if you want to use it for that. What caused that yeast to activate or that mold to activate itself? Air, water, food, and comfort. That bread might have been wet, sitting on a warm countertop, and it came to life. So we're going to talk a lot about compost. Here's another example. Let's say a log falls out in the woods. What recycles that log? Those same nasty germs that we try to kill every day with Purell and antibacterial body wash. Fungi, bacteria come to life in addition to insects. But their job is to recycle that so that it can grow into a new tree. From permaculture, I was taught that rain droplets form on microbes in the air. I haven't researched that 100% myself, but assume that's true. How long will it take for all of our antibiotics start to affect rain patterns? Now, there are absolutely microbes in and on those trees. That's at our place. So the microbes are falling out of the trees all the time. It makes perfect sense to me that condensation could fall on top of those microbes. So they're critical to our weather and rain patterns, very potentially. But bottom line, we could not survive on this planet without those so-called germs. We are walking piles of microbes. I will henceforth call them microbiome versus germs, because germs, does that have a negative connotation for most of you? Probably, we trained ourselves that way. Microbiome, however, is what we all depend upon every single day. We think we understand, at least they digest our food. They're absolutely critical to our brain health. They make up the bulk of our immune system. And in fact, if we were to analyze ourselves with a microscope, we'd find out we have 10 times as many of those microscopic critters physically within our bodies, on our bodies, as we have human cells. Symbiotic relationship. In fact, mitochondria, you heard of that? Dr. Zach Bush will tell you those are bacteria. We are made of microbes. They're absolutely vital to us. As is the same exact thing for your cats, your dogs, your chickens, your honeybees, your earthworms. I'm sure that's not by coincidence. Nature does this for a reason. You want to learn more about the microbiome? Here's some great books. The one on the far left talks about how critical your microbiome is to proper brain function. You ever watch the news and say, gee, I wonder how what was that guy thinking when he did that? In a perfect world, we could try to dissect his microbiome, find out it was all screwed up, and a whole host of things. So none of these issues are not complicated. What's he eating? What's his nutrition? On and on and on. The one in the middle, Dr. Sabine Hazen. Mickey and I got a chance to meet her some years back. Great lady. She's got a company out in California. She's got a machine that will analyze the genes of the microbes within human feces. So she'll take a person with Parkinson's and a person who's healthy, compare the microbiome of each, and there's a difference. There's a difference between a guy who's bald and a guy who has his hair. Differences go on and on and on. So she's trying to correlate that to determine. She's not saying it's cause and effect yet. She's not to that point. But the microbiome is absolutely vital to being a healthy person. She found during COVID, as she treated thousands of patients, she tested and did this stuff, if they were missing bifidobacteria in their feces, they were more likely to get hammered by COVID. She also found what hammered bifidobacteria? The vaccine. What helped? Ivermectin. Just data points for what they're worth. On the far right, Dr. Josh Axe tells you how to get a healthy microbiome. Essentially, it comes from the soil, so I'm going to very oversimplify, but leave some dirt on your carrots when you eat them, and it'll help put some probiotics in your body. So, biology is important to us. Plants have a microbiome too. Exact same as us. That microbiome lives physically within the plant, on the plant. They are the caretakers of the plant. Those are some of the things they do. They recycle nutrients. They make vitamins and minerals that plants cannot make on their own. Things like vitamin C, etc. So it's fascinating to me. So what I like to summarize this with is, nature, God has a plan for these microbes to inject our nutrition at the bottom of the food chain. This is the workforce that does it. This is the workforce that knows the recipe on how to make a nutrient-dense carrot. Miracle Grow does not know that recipe. Neither do we. So if you want to look at it in picture form, you're looking at that plant's stomach, right there. The equivalent to our stomach. Fungi and bacteria in the soil are harvesting nutrients and feeding them to the plant. Dr. Christine Jones, through her research, I think will tell you about 97% of the nutrients that get into that plant first go through a microbe to get there. There's a symbiotic relationship. So how's this work? That plant is a solar cell. Solar panel out there in the sun, sucking in energy. In that process of photosynthesis, it creates sugar. Sugar. That sugar goes on to make up the bulk of the physical plant, but that plant also pumps about 50% of it into the soil. Why does it do that? Because that's one of the food sources for the microbes in the soil, is sugar. Now there's an intelligence here we may never understand. We think we understand that that plant can produce hundreds, if not thousands, of different sugars to speak to different microbes in that root zone. So if it needs calcium, it's going to make the right sugar to speak to the right Pizza Hut driver to go get calcium at the right place and bring it back. Phenomenal. How's that work? Yeah, it's one of those miracles that just happen. That is a picture of some of that sugar coming out of a root hair of a plant. That is the reward the microbes get for their work. So if you're looking for hired hands in your garden, your farm, trillions of those dudes are ready to work for you as long as you don't kill them. We're good at that. So what are they doing? They're getting all of the minerals, all 90 natural minerals of the periodic table into those plants. Theoretically, that's what we're trying to get done. Our blood is a dilution of seawater. Don't know if you ever heard of that. A data point for that, during World War II, when the doctors did not have enough blood in the South Pacific to treat our soldiers, sailor, airmen, and Marines, they filtered seawater and used that for transfusions. There is almost an exact match between the minerals in the ocean and our blood. Think that's a coincidence? Nope. Same thing for plants, same things for your dogs, your cats, your chickens, or whatever. So we're meant to have about all 90 of those natural minerals flowing within us. How do you get that in your plant? You ever got selenium from Miracle Grow to put on your carrots? Would you even know when to give it to them? No, of course not. These guys know that. So this is where I want to define dirt versus soil. Dirt is the dead stuff. Sand, silt, clay. Very important because it contains the mineral content, generally. But it does not become soil until you add life to it. So as you walk around, please start to think with respect of what you're walking on. You're walking on a living skin of the planet. Hopefully. If you're walking on dirt, you don't have to have much respect. So obviously the foundation, just another picture to drive that point home. At the foundation of health on this planet, for every living creature walking on the planet, the foundation is soil microbiome. They're the workers that make this happen. And if you go up the chain, we get healthy plants, and then those healthy plants feed us. That's how the minerals get in you. They feed your cattle, that's how the minerals get in the cattle. You eat the steak, that's how you get the minerals from the, you get the idea, but that's how it works. Now, here's the sad part. Us humans are the best creature on the planet at turning soil into dirt. With our modern technology, particularly here in the United States, we've overemphasized excessive tillage, use of synthetic fertilizers, synthetic chemical fertilizers, high in sodium, that kills biology. Any Icide in Latin means to kill, and it does a good job. Pesticide, insecticide, herbicide, fungicide, any of that kills. Slowly kills us while it directly kills our microbes. So that's what we're doing. We're in love with that approach. I just want to show here, I do soil tests, and when I do those, I do them biologically with my microscope. So this graph is an illustration of 3 soil samples that I've done historically. I went back to my home state of Iowa and I pulled some soil dirt from a cornfield, and I pulled it from a soybean field, just as data for me. The blue column represents bacteria. The red or orange on the far right there is fungus. The green is protozoa, the yellow is nematode. So the point is that's a bunch of different organisms. If you look at the Iowa cornfield, the only organisms you'll see represented there are bacteria. Period, flat out. Roundup herbicide, which is used heavily on GMO crops, kills off fungus like crazy. It'll kill a bunch of bacteria. It's a patented antimicrobial. Monsanto has a patent for it as an antimicrobial, and it works great. But now that you understand where the nutrition comes from, can we truly have nutrient-dense corn when we've killed off most of the microbes that put nutrition into it? It's impossible. So that's the foundation to our food chain, though, isn't it? Go buy Fritos corn chips, made with corn, grown with nothing but bacteria. It's hollow. Same with the soybean field. I just found bacteria. As opposed to what we're going to talk about the rest of this talk, how to make your own biological amendments. That sample on the far right, it's got bacteria and fungi, it's got protozoa, it's got nematodes, it's got life. The critters that will bring you nutrition on your homestead. Oh, by the way, let me not leave out the urbanites. I don't want to beat up on the farmers. I love the farmers. But acre per acre, the most heavy use of chemicals occurs in the city environment. People trying to have a perfect yard with no dandelions, they'll put on more chemicals than the farmers ever do. Causing us the same problems. It'll get in the creek, the river, it'll be in your drinking water. It already is. There's test results for all that if you look into it. So, let's assume you're going to a homestead piece of ground and the biology's been hammered. Just make that assumption up front. I want to draw a quick analogy. What if you showed up to your homestead and you wanted wild turkeys there and somebody had hunted them to extinction? How would you bring them back to life? Well, you need a few things, right? You need some wild turkeys. Then you need some habitat in which they could survive. Water and food. Those are the things that a turkey would need to live. You couldn't take wild turkeys and let them go in the middle of downtown Nashville and expect them to survive. So just kind of think of that analogically as we go through if that's even a word, but let's see here. So now let's talk about our version of wild turkeys. We're going to start with bacteria. We believe there's 1 million or more species of bacteria. We haven't begun to name them Bob, Pete, Bill, Susie. We don't even know what they all do. But in our arrogance, we're genetically modifying them now and releasing them on planet Earth because we can make it better. Brilliant. Anyway, what do these guys do? I'm going to oversimplify for the sake of time, but they eat things that are high in nitrogen. They eat things like manure. They fix nitrogen as well, and let me show you a picture of that. This is a symbiotic relationship of bacteria with, this is hairy vetch, a legume. Rhizobium bacteria, as Carter just pointed out up front. Those little nodules are factories to pull in nitrogen and provide it to that plant. And when that plant dies, that nitrogen is in your soil. We call it nitrogen fixation. So nature has a means to do that. Pull in nitrogen and feed that plant. Fungi. This is our next big category. We think there's 500,000 or more species of fungi. Again, we haven't named them Bob, Pete, Sue, Phil, whatever. But they look like that. These are taken with my microscope. Wood chips, leaves, straw. The more complicated things is what these guys eat. So that's the foods that they like. There's fungi in the root zone of a plant from the garden. Symbiotic relation. I get excited when I see stuff like that. If you guys aren't excited today, hope you'll get that way when you see in your own garden. You want that kind of stuff that's going on. Those fungi are devouring wood chips and helping feed the plant. Now, here's a special type of fungi we call mycorrhizae. Mycorrhizae basically means root fungus. We believe that mycorrhizae symbiotically binds with 95% of the plants that we know of. So it's a big deal. Take a look at the plant on the right. All that white mass that you do not see on the left, that is fungi. It surrounds and grows physically into that root zone. Mycorrhizae fungi will actually create an underground network, sort of like the internet. If there's calcium somewhere in the network and the plant needs it, they can translocate it from point A to point B to feed that plant. Mycorrhizae are very important. You can physically see what it does for the surface area, the water holding capacity, the mineralization. It's amazing. Versus the one on the left. How can you get from the right to the left? Apply a fungicide. And then you're left with a naked root zone. I mean, we intentionally do that a lot of times, right? Without even knowing what we're doing. Protozoa, these are the predators. These are the lions. These guys swim around and they eat bacteria. So they keep things in balance. They'll eat E. coli, salmonella, whatever, things we label bad guys. But and then their poop, if you will, is just like cattle under pasture. These guys are pooping in the root zone. Pre-digested nutrition for the plant. Nematodes, there's about 10,000 species of these, we think. Generally they get a bad name, but these are good guys. These are bacteria feeding nematodes under my microscope. You can see them swimming around there searching for their food. These guys I love seeing because they're keeping the bacteria in check. I don't need an antimicrobial if I got a balance because they're doing it themselves. They're taking care of business. Now, sources of microbes. This is where we're going to get to how do you raise your own, how do you do this. Well, there's quite a few, but if you got nothing else but raw milk, you haven't over-pasteurized your milk, you've got a living substance. You can spray raw milk on your garden. That's a source of biology, in simple terms. You can spray it on your compost pile. If you got extra raw milk that's going bad, definitely don't just throw it away, spray it on something. Or pour it on something. Manure is a great source. We talked about a human microbiome. Your cow has a microbiome, so it's loaded with microbes. Of course, it's only as good as their microbiome, so if you fed dewormers and antibiotics and all that, it won't be as good. Commercial products, we'll talk about those. Pristine soil. If you've got access to pristine soil on your farm, you grab a handful of that, bring that over to where you need help. Worm castings, compost, we'll talk through all this. Raw milk, there you go. You guys have seen that, we don't need to dwell on that. Manure, a great source of biology, a great source of nutrients, undigested. So we have access to on our farm cow manure, chicken manure, we make use of that. Now a caution for this. Have any of you heard of persistent herbicides?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I learned, speaking here, I had many people come up to me afterward and say, geez, I got some bad hay or bad manure from my neighbor and it killed my tomatoes. How many years will it take to recover that? So here would be one example of that. I have fellow cattlemen who love to see a pretty pasture, so they go out and spray on a product called Grazon, or Grazon Next, brought to us by Corteva. The active ingredient is an amino pyrrolid. The stuff's a bugger to get rid of. So when the cow eats it, it will go through the cow and out into the manure. You can compost that manure, and the pyrrolid will probably still be there to get your tomatoes. If he sprays it and harvests the hay, and you get some of that hay as mulch for your garden, it's going to come in that root, and it will potentially harm your garden. So if you look off-site, off Homestead for materials, be cognizant of that fact. I got to make sure I get them as pure as I can. Now, this is a real simple, well, here's an example of how to test for it. North Carolina State has a little 3-page handout on how to test for it. The link is on our website again, under books and resources. But I went to a horse stable several years ago and got free horse manure. Yeah, what a deal. Free horse manure. But I wanted to test it first. So what I did is on the left 7 plants there, I put pea plants into that compost when I brought it home. On the right, I put it in standard potting soil. Do you see a difference in the plants? Yeah, that's a telltale sign that the stuff I brought in is contaminated. And I don't want to use it. Certainly not right away. Now, how do pyrrolids and Roundup and all that stuff, how do they get devoured? The biology actually does it. That's what us humans have going for us. The microbes will clean up the messes we made. But if we kill them all off, that's not going to happen. So your best way to recover from something like this is to continually put more and more biology on it, because they'll feast on this stuff eventually, break it down. But not right away. So, I don't want to discourage you though from going out. Facebook Marketplace is my #1 friend. I don't buy anything new hardly. I go out and buy used stuff. But I also used to buy hay. Now, I'm just going to show you just a real hypothetical example. You're trying to be concerned about what hay you might buy for your garden. Well, this is a real Facebook ad. Did they give it away up top? Yeah, I mean, they're proud of it, right? It also is reflected in the price. So if you see hay that's $60, $70 a bale and they say horse quality, no weeds, that should be an obvious clue. Well, they probably sprayed it with something, but I've never seen a natural pasture without a weed in it. And they're trying to recoup their spraying expenses. As opposed to, say, this guy. He's honest. Not quality hay, it's only $35 a bale. Now, I'm not saying farmers don't have integrity. Start by that. Ask them, did you spray it with anything or not? If they have sprayed it, they're usually proud of it, and they'll tell you that right up front. Oh yeah, we sprayed it, fertilized it, did all this. And then you can say thank you and move on. But I really look for hay that maybe was left outside too long and got all wet. They don't want to feed it to the cows, but they might sell it to you for $10 a bale. So then you can get a bunch of cheap mulch that'll work just great. Commercial. We'll start with the commercial products in case you don't have time to do all this yourself. Worm castings. This is a great source. Worms have a microbiome throughout their digestive tract. A coincidence? No. That's another mechanism nature uses to spread microbiome all around us as the earthworms. They're carrying it in their gut and they're excreting it every day. So you can get worm castings. There was a fellow out here selling them. Take that home. I have a little bucket up here of the solid gold we're trying to make for you guys on your farm. That's what we're getting into. His worm castings will look pretty much just like that. That is loaded with microbiome if you put it under a microscope. So that's a great tool right there. You can go to commercial products as well. I'm a big believer in this company, AgriBio, up in Illinois. If you want to just order some stuff from these guys. I spent 2 days with them last December. They became believers of the soil food web, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago now. 2 young farmers trying to struggle to make ends meet. They got with one of my fellow soil consultants from the soil food web, and he taught them how to do this naturally. They gave up Roundup, they gave up GMO crops. They saved $1 million in the first year in input costs. They reincorporated that into this business and they made a business. So they make products like this one right here. That's a jug of liquid vermicompost. Now, shipping kind of hits you, but they're charging $8 for that. For a gallon jug of liquid biology. And rest assured that's good stuff because I visited, I saw their site, I saw how they do it. They're great people. They're believers in the way you guys are believing. So they're their friends. Mycorrhizae fungi spores. I love to buy, this is a commercial product, it's easier than making it yourself. But fungi, well, we understand seeds to plants. Fungi are spores to fungi. So basically spores are seeds for fungus. So you get these little bags of dried fungal spores. You can't, what I did this year for the first time I thought of it, is I took a little jar, I put my seeds in the jar, I put dry powder, mycorrhizae on it, and I shook it up. I coated the seeds with mycorrhizae fungi spores before I ever planted. Getting ready to transplant your tomato plant, take a teaspoon of mycorrhizae fungi spores, spread it around them. These are just simple things that you can do. You'll think of more than I have. Pristine soil. If you've got woods that have not been sprayed in history of man, you're very lucky. You can go out there because nature has loaded that up with microbiome. They're devouring that every day. Reach down under those leaves and you're going to find exactly what you're trying to reproduce. Your wild turkeys, they thrive right there. Now, if you want to start to do some of this stuff at home, we're going to talk about a worm farm first. This is the smallest thing, and if you're in the urban environment, you can do this yourself. You can do it in your kitchen. You do it right, it's not going to smell, it's not going to be anything, it's going to be easy for you. But typically we use red wigglers for this. You're going to give those red wigglers the same thing, air, water, food, and comfort. The kinds of foods they would eat, they'll eat food scraps. Typically not meat scraps. We don't have time to go into all those details, but feed them food scraps. I feed mine nothing but cow manure. I don't have time to sort through all the food scraps, so I just feed them cow manure. And then I put them in a warm space, warm enough space. Here's a couple books on that. The one on the left will tell you what not to feed your worms. Like things like citrus peels, and I don't remember the list of no-nos, but that's a good book for it. The one on the right is phenomenal to tell you all about this microbe stuff I've been talking about, seems like forever, microbes. And it also tells you how to build a worm farm, and that's my worm farm. The plans were in the book on the right. This is not the only way to do it, but this works well for me. This is just made out of 2x6 lumber. There's a lid on top. I store it outside 24/7. When it got really, really cold last winter, I got one of these little seed tray warmer things, and I stuck it between the layers of the box, plugged it in, and it stayed a toasty 70 in the coldest nights here in Tennessee. Now this will make more sense to you because I'm going to show you this in detail. So when I take the lid off the box, that's what it looks like. You can see where my worms do their work. They're eating up grass clippings and cow manure in the top box. I pull the top box off. I'm getting ready to harvest worm castings. That's what I'm doing. So I take the top box off and I set it to the side. I take the center box off and I put it on top of that box. Now the worms will follow the food. So most of the worms are in the top box. That's where the fresh manure is. So they self-separate for the most part. And now what I'm after is the bottom box, because that's where the worm castings are with the fewest worms. So that's my black gold. I'm harvesting that. I used to pick the worms out of that by hand, but we got a little tired of that, so I got my stepson here with me. He made this box right here, this system to sift the worms. It works great. 1/4-inch hardware cloth, you sift it, it captures the worms, and then you've got strained worm casting to do. It's a time saver. And then you got an empty box. Now this box goes on top. It's a constant relay race. So I rebuild my stack, and I put the middle box on the bottom, next box there, and then the empty box goes on top. And then I load it up with some delicious cow manure. And I walk away for weeks, or a week. You know, whenever I think to come back and check, I'll just see if they've eaten it up or not. They reproduce. The more food you give them, the more babies they make. They self-regulate their population, so it works out great. There's other ways to do this. I've got a blueberry friend who does a 4x8 box, and she feeds worms the same way. When she's ready to harvest the worms, she only feeds them on one side, so that they migrate mostly to one side or the other. I got friends who use a big box like this. They put all the weeds they pull out of their produce and such, and they just throw it in there and they feed the weeds to the worms. When it's time to harvest the castings, they dump it upside down and they pick them all out by hand. So a lot of ways to do it. You can make it out of a Rubbermaid tub set. You can make it out of 3 buckets, the exact same concept. Videos on YouTube, we've got links again on our website, so check that out if you want. You want to get a little snazzier? My father-in-law bought this one. $60 or $80 on Amazon. It's the same concept, 3 boxes. And he has it in his house. Doesn't complain about it smelling, nothing like that. It works out great. And he's got worm castings, and now he's become a houseplant lover. He's got houseplants all over to handle the worms. Here's a snazzier way. I've got friends in East Tennessee who build this, Hiawassee Products. If you want to scale up your operation, this is a flow-through box. So you fill this with the food, the worms follow the food up, and then there's a blade underneath. He's using a cordless drill to bring that blade cutting across the bottom, and it drops the worm castings into those trays. So that ups your game if you get to that scale. This guy, if you're interested in all in worms, Captain Matt, I got to meet him a 1.5 years ago. Phenomenal fellow. He is passionate beyond belief about worms. He raises them out on the East Coast. He has an online class, costs you $50 to take an online class, and he'll tell you everything about raising worms, how to set up your thing, and all that. He's the guy where we got the plans for the sifter. So this guy eats, sleeps, and breathes worms. If you want to buy worms to get started, I only bought them once. They'll live probably longer than me if I keep feeding them. But Mimi's Worm Farms, Uncle Jim's Worm Farms are sources to get your first little batch of red wigglers. Now here's a testimonial. I had a client in Nashville. He called me one day and said, Kevin, I've had a garden for years and years, and it's going downhill. I've been using synthetic fertilizers, yada, yada, yada. So I explained to him the concepts of biology and soil food web and all that. So he latched onto it. He went out right away and bought worm castings, and he sent me a picture a year later. And he said, Kevin, this hydrangea, the most I ever had was 1 or 2 blooms on this plant. So last November, I bought 4 pounds of worm castings. I put them at the base of this plant. I wanted to share with you a picture of what it looks like this year. So, I mean, that was kind of cool. I thought I want to share that with you. So what if we brought together the microbes with air, water, food, and comfort? It's compost. That's what we call compost. There's different types, and we'll talk through these. We're going to start with static. If that log falls in the woods, that's a static compost pile. Static in that it's not moving anywhere. It just sits there. Microbes are devouring that log and making it nutritious again for future plants. Here's an example of a static compost pile on your farm. I feed my cattle hay in the winter where I need to in that feeder. They don't eat it all. Sometimes it has things they don't like, brambles, whatever. So when they're done, I move that, and then I spread it around on the pasture. I try to be observant. I encourage you to be observers of nature. I come back a few weeks later and I see it all churned up. I'm excited because the armadillos came out. They're digging there. What does that mean there? Earthworms, grubs. That hay has attracted nature already to remedy that area. Now, I also come out and spray biology on it if I have time. The liquid biology we're going to show you how to make. I come out and spray it on the hay, speed up this process. Now, here's an example in that same spot in the field. This is some of my poorest pasture. If you see that tall corn there in the short corn, let me explain how that happened. The circle where the tall corn is where I fed them hay. I left the residue there. I sprayed it with biology there. I came back the next spring and said, hey, let me just run my no-till corn planter through here. This old 2-row thing. So I ran it through there, and the corn right through the middle of where that pile was, you see how tall it is? I got full ears of corn off of it. You see the corn right outside where the pile was? Didn't get any taller than 2 feet. Just to show you what you could do with some unrolled, you may have heard Greg Judy or others talk about unrolled hay. Well, shoot, there's a pictorial of doing exactly that. Now, you can make it even better by putting this biology on it, perhaps. There's our static compost pile for the house. We don't take time to sort our food scraps. Anything that leaves our plate that's biodegradable goes to this pile. Pork chop, bones, anything. Dead chickens go in here. If we have a dead piglet, it goes in here. This is an 8x8 square of cattle panels with poultry netting on the inside to hold it in. It doesn't look pretty. You can make it look pretty if you want to take the time. That's what it looks like close up. Anything biodegradable. Cardboard, napkins, eggshells, yada yada. I had planned to be able to turn this with my tractor loader. I just never get around to it. So when it's time to pull compost from this, I just take a shovel and I dig down in it and I pull some out. And I use it. I obviously, common sense wise, I don't dig it out where I just buried a dead chicken. I give that guy time to disappear. Now a caution, very mild caution, but if it's a static compost pile, it generally does not heat up. It does not achieve temperatures that would kill the weed seeds. So when you pull from it, you might end up with seeds from the tomatoes you threw in there growing where you may or may not want tomatoes. So just be aware of that. But if you're using this on the pasture, who cares? Now, you can do this in an urban environment as well. Get you one of these tumblers or get you a backyard one, because our pile we can do on our farm because I don't care if the raccoons or whatever shows up. We've got a guard dog to keep them away. You probably don't have that luxury in the city, so you might want a container like you see on the left there to house it, keep it there. The tumblers, I mean, they're good, I think, but get one with at least 2 compartments. So one side will finish. You can't just keep adding new stuff to it because it'll never finish. Now we'll talk about thermophilic composting. This is perhaps my favorite. This is what Elaine taught me all about. Thermophilic involves heating it up, getting it hot for a certain period of time. We do this because those temperatures for those periods of time will kill weed seeds, and it will kill things like E. coli and salmonella. I personally don't lose any sleep over that, but if you're trying to be an organic certified farm, you absolutely need to meet these thresholds so the certifier can see your logbooks and make sure you got there. So when I make compost, I meet these thresholds. It's just automatic for me now. That's my goal, is to meet some of these thresholds. And when the time window's up, that's when you can turn it, if you will. We're going to talk about that.
Is that heat self-generating?
The heat comes from this. Great, perfect question. The microbes, the bacteria will reproduce every 20 minutes. So one bacteria will go to 2 in 20 minutes. In 12 hours, they will go to 68 billion. Every time they reproduce, they give off X amount of BTUs of heat. Same with the fungi. So you can see if you're giving them the right air, water, food, and comfort, they take off like mad, boom. They give off a lot of heat. That's where the heat comes from. So what foods should we consider feeding our friendly microbes? We talked a little about this. Bacteria like less complex things like grass clippings, high nitrogen things, manure, sugars. The fungi like more complicated things. Think of the woods. What would fall in the woods? That's where the fungi do the most decomposition. So wood chips, old leaves, things like that. Cardboard, cardboard, packing paper. Now, I break up the foods into 3 categories to simplify this. I think it simplifies it a lot, but you categorize potential foods based on the carbon to nitrogen ratio in them. It's not hard. It may sound that way, but it's not, frankly. High nitrogen stuff is the #1 category. That is things like manure, sugars, things that are high bacteria foods. And typically it's a carbon to nitrogen ratio between 5 and 15 to 1. Green stuff, that is things like grass clippings, weeds that you just pulled out of the garden. Food scraps are typically green material. Hay is green material. If It was hay that was cut while it was green. Dehydrated, it still carries that greenness, if you will. Woody stuff, that's wood chips, leaves, cardboard, paper, straw, things like that. So those are the three categories. And if you find, you're going to go look around your homestead, I hope, or your farm and find out what free thing just fell out here that I could use in my compost. If you don't know where it fits, you can just do a Google search on what's the carbon to nitrogen ratio of X, coffee grounds, whatever it is. Okay, then which category should I consider it to be part of? When we get Amazon boxes, I shred them. I keep the cardboard. I keep the packing paper. They are feedstock for my compost. When I mow the lawn, if it's too long, I let it dry and I rake it up and I store it. I let it dry and I store it in that hardware cloth silo on the right. I'm always collecting feedstock for the next compost pile. That spreads the labor out over the entire year. So I'm always storing dried glass clippings. The back right, that is dried, shredded leaves. I typically harvest those from my woods in March and April. I let them go all winter so they're loaded with fungal content. I rake them up, I run them through the wood chipper, and I throw them right there. The bottom left, that's dried chicken manure. I'll pull that out of my eggmobile. When it starts to build up, I've got a slatted floor, but I'll scoop it up. Sometimes I'll put a 1/4-inch piece of plywood under where the chickens roost, let them crap on that for a week, and then I'll harvest it. If it's not dry, I'll throw it on a tarp and let it dry. Because if it's dry, I can store it indefinitely. And I do. I got buckets of chicken manure. Top left, that's just shredded cardboard and paper. I store that too. That's my friend, my wood chipper. I run certainly what do I typically run through there now? Leaves. I'll definitely run leaves through there. If I get hay, I'll run hay through there to make it smaller pieces. I'll just break it up and drop it in the mulcher side. I store wood chips on the farm. Get wood chips. I highly recommend that. You may not want to chip your own because that's laborious, but get a landscape guy who does this for a living and get him to bring you a truckload of wood chips. Store them. I store ours right between the pasture and the woods. So it's in a shady environment. I'm thinking of the fungus. What do they like? What's their air, water, food, and comfort? They want moisture. They want to be close to their friends in the woods so spores can fly out of the woods and land on those wood chips. They're undercover. They're in the shade. They're moist. They're rocking and rolling all year long. Generally, that's what I get. I mean, I go to an Amish sawmill is where I source mine. But get what you can. I mean, you can make the colors and stuff. The microbes will work on that. But try to get the untreated, undyed stuff. Yeah, if you can, find those stuff. So we've always got wood chips sitting around, ripening, if you will. So these guys are already inoculating themselves with fungi as they sit there. That's what it looked like when I dug into it with a spade this spring. You see that white streak across all that fungal growth? Yeah. I start to get teary-eyed when I see that. Hopefully you guys will too at some point. Now, a typical recipe. If I'm going to make a batch of thermophilic compost, I'll use about these percentages. About 15% chicken manure, or manures, high nitrogen. About a 35% green, 55% woody. That would be a typical recipe to do during the warm season. I only do it typically between April and October. I don't try and fight. Ambient temperature is a factor. You know, if it's 0 degrees out, it's not going to heat up real well. So do it when it's comfortable for you. But these would be typical ratios that I would use. How do I measure it? I love this system Elaine taught me. I take 40 5-gallon buckets. These are my measuring cups. Within these measuring cups, I will put X amount of material. There's 40 buckets there. So if I want 10% manure, how many buckets of manure do I have? 4. It's real easy math, and I just line them all up. X buckets of hay, X buckets of leaves, X buckets of whatever, all based on my percentage for my recipe. Now we're trying to have a diversity of microbes in this bucket. So how could I do that? Well, if I diversify the foods. So in my wood chips, in a perfect world, I'd have not only oak wood chips, but maple wood chips, and whatever wood chips. And I'd have hay from, in a perfect world, from 10 different farms, you know, whatever, within reason. But the more diversity you get, that's why I might have packing paper and cardboard shredded, or whatever. So that's what I do. Within reason, I have about 12 different ingredients that I get. Chicken manure, cow manure, I'll use alfalfa pellets. If I don't have enough chicken manure to meet the 10%, I can go to the feed store and get alfalfa pellets or chicken feed. 16% nitrogen is going to compare well to that manure, if you will, and kick. So what I do then is I start taking those buckets out, a fourth of the buckets at a time, and I throw them on a tarp, and I mix them all up, and I add water to it. You want about a 50% water ratio, and you judge that by grabbing a handful and squeezing it. If a drop starts to fall on your hand, that's about 50%. So then I throw it in a silo that sits on the pallet, and then gradually I just work my way through the buckets and I fill up that silo. That silo is 3 foot tall, hardware cloth, 10 foot long. It fits perfectly on a pallet. Now it's portable. I can bring the tractor over, pick it up, move it wherever the heck I want. Now I put a tarp over it and I put thermometers in it. And I start to babysit the temperature. Because I'm trying to meet that organic certification, just because. Now it's a matter of pride for me. If I fail at this, I'm a failure. But I'm supposed to be a compost guy. So I do this regularly, and I monitor the temperatures and I turn it 2 times in the process. Now let's look at another one. Dr. David Johnson. I highly recommend the thermophilic because once you've learned that, everything makes so much sense. Korean natural farming makes sense. David Johnson's work everything makes sense. So Dr. David Johnson is a similar kind of thing. He's out of New Mexico State University. He was hired by a local dairy farm to figure out how to get rid of the manure. So he experimented with it. And this is what he came up with. Very similar to what we just showed you, a big tall silo. This is a wire frame, 5 foot tall. Now I use the same recipe I did for thermophilic compost. All the same ratios of high nitrogen, green, and woody. But it takes about 120 buckets to fill this thing up. So it's some work. Get all your feedstock lined up, maybe get some help. What you do with this is you take the material and you mix it into that. This is one way to do it. You put it into that concrete mixing tub. You see there's water in the tub. You tamp all that stuff down because this is your one chance to thoroughly wet all that material. So you wet it, you soak it in that tub with water. Once you get it soaked, you throw it up in the wheelbarrow. You can see this is a high-tech professional operation, thousands of dollars invested. The extra water will drain out of that and come back into the tub. So you can sort of drain it so it's not saturated. So I had a couple friends helping me do that one day. We put all the feedstock close. We just kept mixing, filling buckets, wetting them. And we filled the big silo. It's got air pipes in it that are perforated so air can flow in. There's a rebar ring on the top to hold those in place. So you might need your MIG welder or somebody who can MIG weld, that kind of thing. So now that will heat up a little bit. Mine did. Once it cooled back down, I threw some worms in there. Start to see how all this can come together. So once it was cool enough for the worms, I threw them in, and I let this sit a year. That's some of what's in here. When I looked at it under a microscope, it was the highest fungal content stuff I had yet produced on my farm through this method. So I'm a big believer in it. Korean natural farming, our tail end one, I briefly explained, if you weren't here, I'll go out into my woods and find a fungal outcropping. I'll carry a little box out with al dente rice in it. I'll position that on top of the microbes, give them a chance to move into it. That fuzzy looking stuff, that's microbial growth. Again, one of those emotional moments when you achieve this and you're excited, you bring them home. That's called IMO 1, Indigenous Microorganisms 1. That's what I bring home and add brown sugar to, and then it becomes shelf stable. That's my IMO 2. I'm putting in a 5-gallon bucket, adding brown sugar, mixing it all up, and then putting it up until I need it again. Now when I want to make this is the equivalent to compost for the Korean natural farming. I take those microbes of IMO 2 out. What am I going to add to them? Probably water, probably food, air, and comfort. That's exactly what I do. So I add water. In this case, I added wood chips, I added rice bran, and I added oats. Doesn't have to be those 3 things, but that's what Chris taught us to use. It's readily available here in Tennessee. Those 3 things. You add water to it, you add the microbes to it, and then you monitor the temperature of this. This you don't want to get over about 120 degrees. It takes about a week. It heats up. You babysit it, it dries out, and now I just store that indefinitely. That box that's years old stuff. Life, just ready to come back to life when I need it. When I'm ready to use it, I might take a handful out, We had a great question from this lady earlier. I take a handful of this and throw it in with my tomato plants when I'm planting transplants. Beware, just sprinkle it on your garden. This is additional stuff from Korean natural farming. Save your old jars and jugs and stuff because I just store it all, label it all. There's a lot of different things there. Humic acid, Dave's bass sauce. I actually went to a friend's pond and caught some bass and dissolved those bass with microbes, and the liquid that's left is a high nitrogen product. That's the high nitrogen product. I did the same thing with hog offal and cattle offal. Anything that's like a protein type stuff, those microbes will devour, create into a liquid, and you've got a pre-digested nutrient for the plant. So that's just, kind of collage of working and all that stuff, thermophilic, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're pretty much looking for stuff that looks like that. Whether it's worms, whether it's thermophilic, whether it's Johnson stew, it looks like what I've got up here. Now, when I look at it under a microscope, this is kind of what you're trying to get to. You can see I've got a fungal to bacteria ratio better than 1. We don't have time to go into so much, but typically optimum for your garden is about a 1-to-1 ratio of fungi to bacteria. Or better, maybe 3-to-1, 4-to-1, whatever. But you can see we've got life. All of our other friends are there too, the protozoa nematodes. So we made that. You absolutely know that is the life you want in your garden. Probably the life you wanted you. We're not smart enough to know yet which of those fungi I should eat with my salad, but probably there's an overlap there. Oh, you probably don't keep your underwear as long as I do. You the stuff underwear. I wouldn't advise it, but short of a microscope, Carter and I were talking about this the other day. This is a real simple test. If you want to see if your microbes are rocking anywhere, take an old pair of underwear, or new, whatever you do, stick it in there in the ground, and it will devour the natural portion of it. You can see all this left is synthetics. What I did not do was time it, so I can't tell you how quick that happened. But that's the kind of thing you can do and play around with without a microscope. So we've got, once I get the solid material, I use it in 3 different forms. If you have enough of this to cover your 200-acre pasture, by all means, go put it on with a manure spreader and get her done. And you might be able to do that, but you're going to need bigger equipment than a pitchfork. Start with a pitchfork, perfect your methodology, and then if you got the time, money, you want to invest in a compost turner and all that, go for it. But you can make it go a little longer, a little further. I could take maybe a ½ gallon of this and use it on an entire acre. How could I do that? Well, let me show you real quick. Now, let me go to the next slide, I think. Yeah. So what I'm going to show you is a compost tea bag. Carter was asking me about this. I sourced this, I think, off of Amazon. Tea Lab, I think, is the company that makes it. Made in the USA tea bag. I mean, you can use an old pair of pantyhose. You don't have to buy this stuff. But this is a 400 micrometer mesh. It will let the critters come through without turning them into julienne fries. So you want some with big enough openings. So what I'll do is I'll take whatever I'm working with, let's say a handful of compost here. I'll describe it quick and then I'll do it, set down the mic. But I'm going to put compost in the bag. I've got 2 gallons of water in this bucket. I'm simply going to dip this in there and I'm going to massage this. And I'm going to make muddy water. Y'all have the vision? That's it, muddy water. If we looked at the muddy water under the microscope, it will be loaded with all the biology. They're just now swimming around. So I can then, do I actually have to do that or y'all got that? You guys figured you're smart guys, you got that. So that's what I do, 2 gallons of water. So if I'm just doing it in the garden, it is that simple. I can pour that 2 gallons into my watering can and I can go walk around and pour it on everything. Now, this might be a good time to add some lead and salt to it or something, to do it in 2 birds with 1 stone. But I don't want to oversalt them. I'm not 100% sure how much is too much salt. So I would err on the side of less first, or I'd separate that. I'd put the salt water on first, and then I'd put those guys on. Different ways to handle it.
Did you say 1 handful to 2 gallons?
That's typically what I'll do, and it just kind of depends on how big your hands are. I mean, this is subjective, but a cup or 2 I put in here for a couple gallons. And ultimately, it comes down to how big your compost is. If our compost was so loaded with biology, we might need a thimble full.
You can't really put too much, right?
Yeah, you can't do too much. Exactly right.
I heard you mention earlier rainwater.
Does tap water count?
Great question. In a perfect world, rainwater would be great. If you have to use tap water, it will likely have chlorine in it, which is not a friend of our critters. So you can neutralize the chlorine with something called humic acid. I order it from Amazon by the quart, and you can take one. I take a little pipette, an eyedropper, an eyedropper. 1 drop per gallon of water will neutralize the chlorine immediately. So if I have to use city water, I put city water in here, put my drops in, stir it up, and then I'm ready to go. Just that quick. That's one way to do it.
Can you repeat the name of that product?
Humic acid. Humic acid. H-U-M-I-C acid. I apologize for not bringing some. I should have thought of that. So now, that's very low tech, simple to do in your garden. Very easy to make a liquid product. Now let's say I want to up my scale a little bit. Okay, in this process, where did I set my turner? Well, I'll do it this way and keep moving. I will use the bigger one here in just a second, so I'll show you that. But here I am in the garden last year. I've got the sprinkle can, and I'm just pouring on biology. That's what I'm doing right there. As simple as that. Now, if I want to put this on my pasture, they make equipment that's $30,000 to convert this into a liquid. Probably more if you want to buy it. I remember back to my childhood that we had an old Maytag ringer washer. And I thought, that might work pretty good for this. So I spent $100 on Facebook Marketplace. I bought this, and I take a big bag of this. I put about 6 to 8 pounds of compost in it, just like a bag of dirty socks. I zip tie the top. I put 12 gallons of water in my trusty Maytag. Drop that in. I spin it for 45 seconds with the agitator. Turn the bag over, do it another 45 seconds. Beautiful. Under a microscope, the microbes are not damaged by that agitation. It's perfect. So then I drain the water out of that.
I think you stuck on your clicker.
What happened here?
By the bag.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, thank you. Oh, I found what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, so I get my 12 gallons. And I can't tell you this is 100% the way to go. It's just what I've been working with so far. I'll get that 6 or 8 pounds of compost and 12 gallons of water. I will put it into my water tank, which is a 275-gallon IBC tank. You can see that ain't fancy. I welded together some scrap metal and I made it. I hooked that to the tractor. I've got 20 foot of PVC pipe there, 10 foot on each side. And I connect it, and I go out and I open the valve, and I dump biology on the pasture for 15 minutes. And I'll typically cover an acre in that period of time. Just the speed I drive the tractor, etc. So that is one way to go put biology on the pasture. Now, if I want to take it a step further, it's more work, but sometimes there's a reason to do that, to make compost tea. What I made here is something I call compost extract. We have extracted the microorganisms. If I want to take it a step further, I would actually add food to it, aerate it, and let the biology come back to life and grow. And with that, here I am bubbling some compost tea. There are times to do this because you want to bring the biology back to life before you put it out somewhere. I don't use this as much anymore. It's so much easier just to use this. But you can get bigger brewers to do that, bigger air pumps to do that. Yada yada. Now, what I want to just kind of start to conclude here with is we've done all this work to create this biology. We acquired our wild turkeys. Where do we let them go so they have a chance to survive? We shouldn't be dumping our extract up here on the stage and expecting any miraculous results. If we can bring this together like we would want in nature, we get some cover crops planted when we bring this biology together. That's the habitat our microbes are looking for. That's my winter cover crop of wheat and rye. I'd have done better to have a 40-way cover crop there. Then there'd be, 1,600 kinds of sugar or 16,000 kinds of sugar being fed to my diverse microbes. So hopefully you start to gather, it just all makes sense. Diversity matters. Diversity of sugar, diversity of microbes. Get as much as you can. That's the kind of stuff you're wanting. That's the root zone beneath those cover plants. That is habitat for your microbes. So if you just dump them on bare, compacted ground, don't expect it to do a lot right away. You need to try and, like we talked about, use the broad fork, open it up a little bit, try and help it. Help create the right habitat for these guys to thrive. I use the cattle a lot. You can see when I rotate my cattle, what do? They eat and they tromp it all down. What's all that tromp down stuff? Food for these guys. Now, if I'm on top of my game, I could come out with my spreader and dump biology all over that as I'm trying to rehabilitate an area. I don't do that so much anymore because I've been doing this long enough that that stuff quickly gets devoured and more plants are coming up underneath. Diversity, if you want to understand diversity, here's some great resources for that on diverse cover plants. I think I'm wrapping it up with this kind of thinking here. So do you see my pasture on the left, all that tall stuff? Versus my yard on the right. What's the biggest difference between those two? I mow it once a week. Do you see what mowing does? I don't babysit that yard, believe me, this is no Hollywood yard. It is mowed weeds. But do you see what it looks like if you mow it once a week? I'm trying to make the point that many of you are going to have cattle and livestock. What if I mowed the stuff on the left 24/7, 365? What would it look like? It would look like this. Because that's what a whole lot of livestock producers do. They don't manage their livestock. They have mowing machines operating 24/7, 365 on their pasture. Is that a hospitable area for all these microbes you just tried to release? Not in any way, shape, or form. Versus, I'm not saying I'm perfect, some of that might be overgrown, but is that a hospitable area for microbes? Yeah, absolutely. You can see where my cattle are now grazing. I've tried to keep it as hospitable as I possibly could until the moment I graze it. And then it becomes more hospitable because I've dumped food all over it. So I'm just trying to point out quick, if you heard talk about rotational grazing and that sort of thing, maybe you can better understand how that just ties into everything. Ties into everything. You are, by mowing it 24/7, 365, you are vastly decimating the habitat that these guys need to leave. The air temperature is going to go up because it's going to get hot. It's going to dry out. So you're taking away air. You're taking away water. You're taking away comfort. And you're taking away food. Are there any solar panels there to feed sugar to these microbes? Nope. Not at all. So if you're going to have livestock, it's work to rotate them. A lot of you already know that, but this is why you're doing it. You're trying to create soil, not dirt. So if any of this was of interest to you and you want some actual hands-on classes, my wife and I decided to do 2 classes this year, maybe 2 to 3 sometimes, but we're doing 2 classes this year on our farm. If you want to come on the 6th of September or the 20th to our farm in Hampshire, Tennessee, we'll spend all day with you showing you how to physically make a thermophilic compost pile, how to set it all up, turn it, do all that sort of thing. That takes a good portion of the day, but as best we can, we'll talk more about the worm farm, we'll show you the worm farm, walk around the farm, that kind of stuff. So that's what we do there. Mickey makes a great lunch for you, so that's on the farm too. If you want more information, you can go to our website, libertytracefarm.com, and we don't have any fancy event connection, whatever. Just send us an email if you want to be part of it, and we'll reserve a spot for you. And let me just end with a thank you. What the work you guys are doing is actually vital to the health and future of this nation. I have come to believe there is no greater threat to our nation than our health. That's why I'm wearing this hat, by the way. It's not a political anything. We have a good population and we cannot afford it anymore if you can try and fight it the way we're fighting it. We fight it with this. We fight it with this. This is where health originates from. And you guys know and get that better than anybody else I know right now, so please carry that on and spread that good word. And thank you all for sticking around today. What's it?